Okay. So, welcome to today's podcast episode. Ayush, Smriti, and Sanjay, it's really good to have you here. We've been planning this podcast for a while, but it feels like this is the perfect time to do it. And I just want to let our viewers and our listeners know that, Ayush, Smriti, and Sanjay all belong to the same family. And not only are they connected through blood, but they have a very special connection in terms of kidneys. And Ayush, I want to begin with you. Tell us a little bit about you and what your story has been with respect to this podcast.
Sure. So I've been born with a congenital disease, which led, me to have chronic kidney disease. It's a disease, even after a transplant, these transplants aren't, lifelong, anywhere from probably a month, in worst case scenario, to 20, 25 years last, and, help you go through your day-to-day life as a normal human being. The caveat of having a transplant, because we still don't have enough technology right now to kind of have a lifelong solution to this. So this is something you struggle with on a daily basis. You have to be very careful about your general health as well. You cannot afford to kind of um, get even a cold, something as minute as a cold, because it can affect your physical health. And you have to be very kind of very careful with your personal hygiene, as well as drink the right amount of water, fluid, your dietary restrictions. It's a whole lifestyle change, but you have to accept where you are and live every day um, as your best.
So can I ask you, as a child, so you got your first kidney transplant when you were how old? Six, seven?
Six.
6 years old. And I'm just imagining 6-year-old Ayush, going to school with other children
Right.
who can do,
Sure.
the normal things. What was that like for you?
Sure. So I think it is a blessing in disguise. While looking back at it, I always feel when you're younger, you have a higher threshold of trauma. The reason I believe that is because you have such a lack of information. So for me, I would say the recent kidney transplant I had in the last 3 months was probably a a tougher ordeal for me, because I was swarmed with information. I had access to information. I know the risks, right? As a 6 year old, you don't really know what you're going through, right? You trust your parents kind of decision that you're going through it, and you don't even know what's a kidney at 6. Let's be honest about that, right? You don't know what it kind of entails. You don't know the reason why this is even happening to you, right? So I think for me, the point which was probably more of a shock was post transplant. So pre transplant, during transplant, you aren't very sure of what's happening, but after transplant, the first significant or tangible sign that you've gone through a transplant is a huge scar across your body. And as a 6 year old, other 6 year olds don't have that, right? And you have to also understand that, I mean, this I understand now looking back at it, but at the time I was like, oh, I'm not like the other kids, right? So you can develop stuff like body insecurities at a very young age, because there's this huge scar kind of going diagonally through your body to a certain extent at the time. So obviously, at 6, you don't have the maturity. People around you don't have the maturity to deal with it. It's a new kind of phenomenon for everyone to deal with. So I think early on, it was a kind of a tough thing to accept. But all of these realizations come after the transplant, not during and before it.
And just maybe to 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 clarify, so the transplant that you got, it was your mum, Smriti, who gave her
Sure.
kidney to you. So, Smriti, let
Yeah.
me ask you, what was that like for you? I mean, obviously, Ayush was very young. He didn't really understand, what kidney disease was about. But you and, your family obviously knew and understood the risks. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for you when you first realized he had a, congenital condition?
Um, I would say that the whole family kind of came together, and there were many options from my in-law side also which were available, but we were too young to actually understand the nuances. My husband and I mean, like Sumit and I, and we also felt that Ayush is very young, so it is better that the mother donate, or because I had the same blood group, so I was the first choice for obvious reasons, and he was very young. In fact, even in Mumbai, they hadn't done a transplant on such a young person. This was probably the first one at that age. They had done 15-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds, but 6-year-old, they had not heard of a transplant, at least in Mumbai. We had obviously gone to the three top hospitals, and all of them, it was a first one for them. And though my mother-in-law was O positive and she was very, very keen and she's very fit, she had no pre-existing diseases, and she also was 60 then, or probably less. Her kidney was found very healthy. She went through the tests, but we felt that Ayush was very young, and the second one maybe we could think of something, but as of now we wanted to be very safe, so we decided to go. And as a mother, I actually welcomed it, and I never thought of anything beyond that how difficult. Though let me tell you that I'm a person who's really scared of going under the knife. I mean, even going to a hospital scares me personally, and uh, still I just went through it without thinking. I mean, I was numb to the thing that I'm so scared of going into an OT, and anesthesia scares me because I get that feeling that I may not ever wake up after the anesthesia. So I was paranoid, patient as such, but in terms of giving the kidney and going for the transplant, I don't know from where the strength came, and I didn't want to read up more or know more. I just wanted to go and get this boy on feet as soon as possible, because the first 5 years of his life were very difficult in terms
Mm.
of not being able to eat normal food, his growth getting affected. He was very thin. His skin color had become dark because the toxins were developing, and this was a slow process because any chronic disease is slow. So it started from, I think, year two, and by the time the system collapsed, that was six. And the doctors were watching it very closely. So the only good thing was that they did a preemptive transplant, and there was a kidney in the family available. So there was no dialysis to that extent. There was no misery in the hospital. Before that, the life was very tough because he would throw up almost everything which was given, and there were a lot of food restrictions because his kidneys were not filtering the excess in the blood.
So when did you discover that he had a problem? How old was Ayush when you realized that he was struggling?
So when we came to the UK, when he was exactly 1 year old, there was a English doctor who had come to Mumbai on an exchange program, and we had gone for an opinion to him, and he said that he has a congenital problem which may or may not end up in renal failure, because there is a pattern to that disease. Some of the patients end up in renal failure, which is called post urethral valves. That is the actual term for that congenital anomaly, where you have valves during your formation, in the womb. They have extra valves at the urethral level. So what happens is, when the kidney is excreting poisons and toxins through the urine, it doesn't go out because there's a valve obstructing the urethra. So it's not expelled out of the system, it remains in the system and slowly damages the kidney, and that's what happened with him. So he had extra valves in his urethral passage. And so when you're one, it is very difficult to ascertain the exact kidney function. But I remember that when we were called to the UK, and he said he will do a preventive surgery wherein he will use the appendix as a conduit and empty out the bladder at frequent intervals, so that the urine doesn't further damage the kidney, and therefore you can prolong the life of the native kidneys. So that was the preventive surgery we did. But post that, it was a shocker that when they did a kidney function, that which is called the glomerular filtrate rate, GFR. It measures the kidney function. So that was done in London, and they found it to be 20% then. So which was a shocker even to this doctor. He said 20% is like saying that you don't have much time. And that time he was one, and we used this channel to empty out his bladder at frequent intervals. But by three, we knew that we will end up somewhere down the road in
So you
this.
already knew that the transplant was inevitable.
Yes,
One
at
point.
three, when he was three,
Yeah.
because then the readings started going down very fast.
And this is how many years ago? Remind us. Was it 15, 16 years ago? Or
16.
longer?
19.
19 years ago. Right. Okay. So at that time, how much information was there? I mean, how well established was the kidney transplant procedure?
It was very well established. This is a very old, breakthrough, which I would say it was in the 1950s or something when the first kidney transplant was done, and it's a fairly well accepted and old. Surgery, and this is one of the first organs which was transplanted. It was the first organ. Kidney organ transplant was the first organ which was transplanted. So only what has changed over the years, over the 40-50 years, is the protocol and the medication that takes newer methods and newer protocols come in, where the medication is less severe, or I would say less number of steroids are used. So only that has, I think, progressed in so many years. And probably the way they conduct the surgery now, it is robotic and laparoscopic and so on. Earlier on, that was not there. It was a traditional surgery which entailed a big gash in your abdomen, both on the donor and the recipient side. Now it is much better. So that has matured and the medication has matured, but it's pretty much the same in so many years.
What percentage of donations are actually from living donors, and how many donations come from somebody who has died and whose kidneys have been preserved for donation? Do you know? I don't know if
So
you
it
know.
is very low. I think, Ayush, would you like to answer?
So I think it also varies from country to country. If you want to speak specific about the United Kingdom, I would say a majority. I don't know the exact percentage, but going through the kind of the waitlist program and having a look at it, a good majority is deceased people, or people who've passed away. People are on the wait list for many years through the NHS. I think it's a very small percentage of living donors, and obviously the large percentage of living donors are usually family members of the person suffering with uh, chronic kidney disease. But specific to the UK, I think, because I was in dialysis for 9 months, I had talks with other patients who have been on dialysis for over 3 years, and they're just waiting for a day when this misery of theirs will end.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about dialysis, because we hear about dialysis, but I think most
Sure,
people don't really know what it means or how it
sure.
influences somebody's
Yeah.
day-to-day life. Can you tell us what it's
Yeah.
like?
So last year in November 2021, I felt I had the flu. So I didn't even know I was kind of getting my kidney was getting rejected. I just assumed if I'm, really lethargic. In the sense of my body literally had a very hard time moving from my room to the kitchen, to and fro within the house, right? And you have to also understand that the first time I had so-called symptoms of chronic kidney disease was five. So I couldn't identify the symptoms within myself while it was happening to me when I was 21. I just assumed it's the flu. Me throwing up regularly again, not being able to digest any food for a week. I remember I used to just have more or less um, fluids and avoid solids because I just couldn't, um, couldn't digest anything.
Just
And
to be
having
clear, you were on your own. You weren't at
yes,
home with your
no,
parents.
no, I
You would,
was in the
you
UK.
might have
Yeah,
been able
so
to guess that that's what.
identified, correct, but I couldn't
Okay.
personally identify the symptom. But also, at the time I read in the news that the flu season in November in the UK is quite apparent. So I just kind of assumed that this is probably the flu. But I think one evening it was getting really bad to the point I was starting noticing that if I sleep at 6 p.m. and wake up at 1 p.m. the next day and still feel absolutely, you know, um, with no energy and full exhaustion, this isn't normal anymore. So I went to A&E in the UK at St. Thomas's, and they took a few blood tests, and they literally after 2 hours, the doctor herself said, "How haven't you kind of identified these symptoms much earlier? Because this kind of when my mother explained that GFR was 20 at the age of 3, my GFR was 7 when this blood test was taken, right?
And
So
did you get
GFR, you can think it of a
yeah,
very to simplify it for your audience, you can think it of as a battery on your phone, right? That 100% is my phone is full of charge, and 6% it's about to die. You can think that's how I simplify it for myself, right? So at 6, and creatinine is basically the level of toxins that don't get filtered out by a kidney. And for a normal person who doesn't have chronic kidney disease, it kind of is anywhere in the range of zero point 0.8 to 1.3. That's considered 1.3 is also considered the brink of, you have to look at this more seriously. And my creatinine at the time of that blood test was 11, so 10 times what, or 11 times what normal is considered. And I was so the doctor said, we have to keep you here for 4 days, or at least give you the strength back so you don't collapse on the street, or collapse during work, because you have zero strength. You are, like you said, you aren't digesting anything. We have to get you to a point where you can at least stand back on your own 2 feet, right? And the day after, my kidney specialist or my nephrologist, as they're called, visited me at St. Thomas's and said, you have to get on dialysis. And I, like I said earlier, wasn't very educated about what dialysis really involved, right? So to kind of give a very simplistic definition of dialysis, it's a replacement for your kidney, which is not the most effective. Let's be honest about that, because it's a machine at the end of the day. So there are a lot of toxins that cannot filter out because it's a machine and it's not the organ. So the limitations are in your diet, whatever you consume in terms of uh, potassium-rich foods, phosphorus-rich foods, which is everything from dairy to orange juice, very simple everyday foods. It cannot um, filter out effectively. Phosphorus, it cannot do it at all, and potassium it does, but not at a very good rate. And a key sign of physical symptom of you knowing your kidneys aren't working is when your body starts getting puffed up and you aren't really passing out urine or any fluid, right? So then the fluid's actually taking space in your body, and you think you're putting on weight, but it's actually fluid buildup in your body. You aren't putting on any weight because you aren't eating anything anyway, so it's usually fluid buildup. And what dialysis involves is the filtration of these toxins, but they're done through the blood, right? And there are various types of dialysis, but the dialysis I had to go through was called hemodialysis through the neck line. It's called a line or a catheter, which is kind of created close to your chest, and where it gets the blood supply directly from, I think, the aorta, which is the largest artery of the heart, and where it will kind of, they kind of create a a tube which connects to it, and also, kind of is protruding from your chest. So it's like a tube which always exists. It cannot, go inside. It's half protruding outside, and obviously the rest is going inside your body and connected to the aorta. And there's a dressing so you can make sure, no infections kind of, because obviously it's an open wound. So, if you don't keep it clean, you're very likely to have a infection. And most doctors recommend this as a short-term solution because, like I said, you have a high likelihood of getting an infection. So the eventual goal is to either shift it to something called a fistula, which is the other type of dialysis, which is where they kind of join the artery, the artery and the vein in your hand. They have to surgically interact with it and kind of make it one. And for 4 hours, you are literally going to keep your arms straight, and it's going to be filtered through that, right? But fortunately, I didn't have to undergo the second step of dialysis, which usually happens, because I was lucky enough to get a donation and 9 months post dialysis.
So the 9 months. Sorry, it's just maybe to understand what happened when you were getting
Sure.
this, dialysis that was connecting directly into your aorta. Was that were they actually basically taking out your blood, filtering it, and putting it back, or were you getting a
Yeah.
So it was your own blood that was being filtered.
It's my own blood, yeah, which is getting filtered out over. So usually it's done alternate days, thrice a week, for 4 hours at a time. So it's like 12 hours of your week is kind of, literally gone to that. The other big problem of dialysis, apart from just, um, having a very, very condensed diet and a very, you have to have very specific foods, is also you kind of, at least personally, my personal experience has been as you kind of lose taste in food, where you don't really enjoy what you're eating, what you're drinking. Because in the back of your mind, you're always like, oh, does this have potassium? Does this have phosphorus? What is good for me? What is not? And me being a vegetarian, most of my diet was potassium rich, phosphorus rich food. So you're also kind of not eating things you like. It creates, at least for me personally, it had that kind of mental effect that if I'm not enjoying what I'm eating, then you kind of go in that depressive state of, then what's the point, right? When if you can't even eat what you like, then why should I make an effort for anything? So, I mean, I think for me, dialysis was more the psychological effects, which, because when I went to my center, I was the only 21-year-old undergoing dialysis, and the next closest person who was going through dialysis was at least 50, 55 years old. So I think for me, the psychological detriments were far more than probably the physical aspect, because like I said, I've undergone several, so-called life-threatening situations through my life. So my pain tolerance is, at least on a physical level, pretty high, right? But for me, dialysis probably affected me more mentally, because when I graduated from university, I was the first out of all of my friends to get a job. And then that 1 year gap of just being in so-called, I term it for myself as a limbo state, where you don't know where you're going, but you're just stagnant, right? And then seeing all my friends progress in their life, it kind of affected me more, I guess, on a psychological level than a physical level.
Yeah. And we will talk a bit more about how you dealt with that, but I'm really keen to bring Sanjay into this conversation now. So, we've talked about the first transplant, which was your mum, and then, sort of 15 years later, you found yourself needing another kidney, and then you were part of the NHS process, but it didn't quite result in a transplant quickly enough. So Sanjay, let me bring you in here. Talk us through how you got involved in this, and what persuaded you to become the donor for Ayush.
To be very honest, my involvement in the initial years, till Ayush was about 5, was quite not there, because most of the time what we were hearing was that Sumit and Smriti were running around all over the world trying to get treatment for Ayush. And since at that point of time we couldn't do much about it, so uh, except for expressing our concern, we didn't have, I didn't have much to contribute. But when there was a time when I heard that Ayush needed a transplant, at that point of time, I seriously considered offering myself, and I discussed with my parents, that is Ayush's grandparents, and I also discussed with my then wife and my child that I'll be offering. At that point of time, we were not aware that Smriti was offering. So, but there was lot of worries and concerns expressed to me at that point of time, though I was quite determined. But before I could kind of proceed further on this, we heard that Smriti had kind of offered, and therefore my involvement was not required at that point of time for giving my kidney. So
Just
offering my
once, I
kidney.
just want to, for the people who are listening, I just want to clarify that Sanjay is Ayush's uncle. So Sanjay is Sumit, Ayush's dad's brother.
Yes.
That's right. And did you
Yeah.
have the same? Do you have the same blood group as Ayush? Was that the reason?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
see.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Please
So,
continue. Yeah.
so I am actually very big on altruism and on and encouraging donation of all kinds. So I am a regular blood donor, and and okay. Unlike most people, I am not very scared of surgeries and hospitals, and I've been a caregiver to a lot of people, my friends, my family. Whenever any hospital attendance is required, I've been offering myself since the time I was, I think, 16, 17. So I'm not very much intimidated by doctors, and in fact, I get quite involved with medical procedures and try to understand from a cognitive point of view what it is all about. So it doesn't scare me. So, and pain tolerance is very high. As I said, we also knew that it's going to be one day. This day will come when he will be needing a second transplant. Definitely. In 2021, Ayush got an infection of COVID, and at that point of time, there was a lot of he became seriously ill, and we were quite concerned at that point of time. Uh, we also, I think, though we were not admitting it to ourselves, but we knew that this is going to have um, a negative impact on his kidney, uh, because anyway the kidney was getting old, and it was the countdown had already started. But then, so now I'm tying up with Ayush's story, that when he started having, towards the end of 2021, November, December, when he started having dialysis, then Ayush's parents moved to UK, and they were trying through the NHS to get it. Uh, so kind of I was biding my time. Okay, let's see when if they are done, because at that point of time they were very hopeful of getting a kidney. In fact, they got an offer also from from a voluntary donor, and that point of time they were very sure that they will get a kidney in UK, and they had a very positive impression of the UK health system and post-operative care, hygiene, things like that. And they were, in some, they were quite inclined towards getting the surgery done in UK. So in February, I kind of thought that I'll insist that I'm going to offer, and I told him that, look, don't worry, there are many options. You come back to India and you try there, set a deadline, and after that, if it does not happen, you come back to India and we'll get it done here. There are many options here, and take me as your last option, not as your first option. You explore everything, and but I am there. Just remember that I am going to be there. We have two kidneys, and 1954, one first kidney transplant happened internationally, and in India, 1971. So it's a very well established technology. all surgeries have some degree of risk. So this also has a minor degree of risk. Uh, I don't think. I'm a regular blood donor, so I thought I should up my game this time around. Yeah.
Well, it's brilliant that you came forward and Ayush is back to good health. So just to finish off on your story, Sanjay, so what did you find that you needed to change? Were there any sort of concerns about you donating your kidney? Was your kidney in perfect health? And talk us through what the risks were that you were made aware of.
Yes, yes. So these are so what had happened was that uh, I am actually overweight. I'm not obese, but I what clinically they call it overweight. So I am overweight, and because of that, uh, my sugar level had kind of gone up slightly, and I was on medication. So what is known as in medical terms, it is called pre-diabetic stage. So when the test started, so I was not aware of this. So when extensive tests started, then we came to know that um, my sugar level was in the pre-diabetic zone. So so the doctors refused initially. They said we will not do it unless until you lose 3 to 4 kgs of your weight. So that is a blessing in disguise at any at any stage in life. If uh, if there is some compulsion where you have to lose weight, it's good, no? So I just took it very positively. So 3 to 4 kgs was quite a breeze in 1 month. As soon as we lost 3 to 4 kgs, my sugar level also came down, and it was in the safe zone, and we went ahead with the. So in answering your question on what precautions I have to take, I am 57, so why hide my age? I'm 57, and therefore for all for most men who are in this, I have to be mindful of my weight, and I have to be mindful of what I eat. uh, Contact sports I never played much, so contact sports I can't do. So that's okay. Okay, I can't afford accidents, because now I have only one kidney. That's all. Yeah, one downer has been that I can't take painkillers because most of the painkillers are nephrotoxic. Only a few are not nephrotoxic, so I have to be very careful and make sure that careful about my muscles, my joints, my head, everything, so that I don't stress much, so that I don't get a headache. So all the painkillers are kind of now almost no-go zone for me, except under very expert medical supervision. So that's the only downside, but that's also a blessing because why stress or why not take care of your joints and muscles. So I'm just trying to lose weight further, so that I do not even get into that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sanjay. It's such a valuable perspective that you offered. That actually we all have two kidneys, and really we don't need two kidneys. It's great that we have two kidneys, and if you have two healthy kidneys and somebody in your family or someone who needs it, it is possible to give one to them without materially
Yeah.
affecting your health. And I think maybe
Yes.
something not many people know about, and it's really helpful to have two people here who look, to us, to me, really look both very healthy. What was the post-operative? Maybe I'll come to you, Smriti. When you first had surgery, talk us through briefly about what that was like, and how long did it take for your remaining kidney to get used to not having its friend there working with it?
It took about 4 weeks to recover, maybe slightly more in my case, because apparently I had lost a lot of blood, and I was very thin. I was like 40 kgs that time. So my recovery was much slower. I didn't have the strength. So I would say I felt very weak in the first 2 weeks, and the scar took time to heal and so on. But once I became fine, I could not make out any difference from what life was pre surgery and post. So, and even till today, I have never felt that I don't have one organ except for the scar. When I look at it, I remember, okay, I had this surgery so many years back. So it's just like having a C-section baby, that you look at your C-section scar and then you remember, okay, you had a C-section so many years back. So that's about it. In terms of daily life or my lifestyle, I have not changed anything. And of course, now I'm 55 and I do take care of my sugar intake and so on, which in any case I would have. Any person reaching that midlife has to be careful about what they eat. So it's more for that, but I've never felt any difference in any which way. Apparently the doctors, or want people who are very athletic and are into a lot of gymming, hiking and contact sports, to be a little careful and not go to back to that regime. But I was never a very a sporty person, or a person who exercised a lot, so it really didn't make any difference to me. So to that extent, I would say I was lucky.
And Sanjay, what was your recovery like after surgery?
Yeah, so my recovery was quite fast. And, first, I think post-operative, about 4 to 5 days, I was back on my feet, um, doing everything, uh, eating everything. So there were no restrictions. As I said, healthy food. Of course, one has to make sure that one's food is healthy and one doesn't get into junk food.
Mhm.
Uh, um, about a month, I was asked not to drive, uh, which I followed, and not to travel. So on the 31st day, I drove also and I traveled also. So that's okay. Uh, and I was asked that for 12 weeks, I was not supposed to carry very heavy weights. Uh, so therefore, yeah, I had to take help. Even when traveling, with my luggage, etc., I had to take help at the airport and at the railway station.
So
No
what I'm hearing from both of you is that, there was obviously the initial post-operative recovery, which is understandable. You've just, given away a vital organ. But other than that, you've come back to fairly normal life, obviously, taking care of your health and your diet. Are there any particular foods or, things that you're avoiding? I mean, we
nothing,
talked about alcohol, and with Smriti, you said, you're still able to drink. It's not like suddenly you have to become teetotal or anything like that.
nothing. Nothing.
Nothing.
Whatever is required for healthy living, you should have, and
Yeah.
there is no restriction. In fact, what is bothersome at times is the concern and the worry that other people express. So that's quite very difficult to navigate at times. But otherwise, because
Yeah, yeah, absolutely the
try
same.
to people try to fuss over you so much, though. So that's little bothersome. Otherwise,
Yeah. So I want to get back to Ayush now. So Ayush, what is it like having two people in the family who kind of essentially given you the gift of life? How does that feel for you?
Um, so I will also like to, address this in two parts, because like I said, at 6, you don't really have the awareness of what's happened, right? But I think I can see a tangible shift in perspective from myself, from within, since probably the second transplant, right? Because and genuinely, I can't pinpoint what's happened, but it's been like a metaphorically, might sound a bit dramatic, but a rebirth kind of a thing, right? Physically and emotionally. In the sense, I've done things post transplant that I've never done uh, for the last 22 years of my life. And I was for example, a very fussy eater, pre transplant, where I would be like, even if someone tells you it's healthy, you're like, I don't like the taste, so I'm not going to touch it, right? And again, the most important part of this is like inherent motivation and to kind of look up about, okay, what are the right things to eat? What are the right things to do to get back to 100%? What exercises should you do? No one's telling me to do this, right? I'm doing my own research and trying to be like, and I think ironically, looking back at going through experiences like dialysis have made me probably value this kidney more, right? Because at 6, as mentioned before, it was a preemptive transplant. So I took it for granted, where I'm like, yeah, I'm never going to go through dialysis. That unfortunate for the ones who do. Like, I had that kind of a mindset. I'll be real with you, right? But after going through 9 months of dialysis, especially, I think the greatest kind of and this is all happened now, the realization of it. When you're in it, you're not really thinking of these things. But perhaps looking at, understanding how kind of grateful you are. Because I went for what I considered 9 months of misery. There are people who are in the UK on the wait list for over 3.5 years. And they never had that promise of, that one day will come. And I'm telling you the date, and, you're going to get a kidney and you're going to be fine. They're doing it every day and they're just living life. Another positive thing which I had a look at it, I remember when I used to go to the dialysis center, I used to just put my headphones on and try to shut off the world. But people who have been on dialysis for 3.5 years and plus, they are talking to each other, they're having a good time. And then I realized about why is it so important to kind of accept your situation for what it is rather than fantasizing about a reality you don't know when you reach, right? They made each and every one of those days at dialysis one of happiness, or they were happy where they were. They weren't complaining, they weren't kind of miserable because they accepted their situation, right? They were like, okay, I'm dealt with this pack of cards and this is what I have to kind of do with it. I can't be like, can you please change my hand, correct? So there have been four big things I have done personally post transplant to understand how grateful I am for this opportunity of getting back on my 2 feet, right? I have been exercising almost every day since the last 3 months. I've picked up activities which I was like, okay, I might do it, but I never really did it before. Like I've picked up, I started doing long distance walking and then slowly transitioned into jogging, and very recently, even started running. And I'm kind of hitting new goals for myself, right? And why is it, really inspiring to see it for myself is because pre-transplant or pre-22, I had never even hit these numbers as a healthy person, right? So kind of hitting perhaps 8.5 kilometers in an hour of walking is something I've never done in my entire life, but I've done it within 2 months of recovery, right? And we've started a book club in our family, and we review books on a weekly basis. And I used to be a very consistent reader during early teenage years, and then just gave up the habit. And I'm back to reading books, classics, um, and I've read like 6, 7 books in the last 3 months because I'm enjoying it. No one's telling me, oh, you should read because it's good for you, I picked up singing, which I was like, okay, I'll do it once, but I never did it. I'm doing it twice a week and practicing every day. So, I found a new meaning of life. And I think the reason I found a new meaning of life is not just having a second transplant, but also going through the past trauma and realizing there was a time where you couldn't do the most basic things, right? And I think it's very important, one, to realize, to go through trauma and then get out of that trauma, right? Where you're like, okay, now I have to, take the most basic joys in life not for granted. And I've seen also what it feels when you don't have those basic joys of life, right? For example, when I had COVID in 2021, I couldn't breathe, right? If you tell someone you can't breathe independently and you're only going to breathe through a machine, we all take breathing for granted, right? So, and a lot of these experiences have been very, again, in retrospect, a great thing to go through because, your pain tolerance goes up. I have a higher kind of, the reason I can run more, even though I probably get breathless, is because I'm like, I have gone through much worse. So I can push myself more at a safe obviously, you have to also keep in mind you've gone through transplant, so you shouldn't really go off the chart. But I'll do my research. Is it healthy for me to run? Talk to my doctors and do it. So at least the past 3 months have been, made up for all the probably, trauma prior to it. So it's obviously quite grateful to have the opportunity to uh, undergo 2 transplants at the age of 22, because there are some people might have a donor, but some people may not have the finances. There's something always, that's going to stop you from getting there. But I've never had these kind of insecurities or these issues which are huge for someone else. I've had the kind of financial comfort and someone willing to, give their organ to me. So the most I can do is, one, not take it for granted, and then make the most of every day.
That's so beautiful. I mean, I love how wise you are, and of course you've been through more probably in your 22 years than a lot of people will have in their lifetime. So Smriti,
Sure.
how's that for you, listening to Ayush speak this way? Because, we met when you were traumatized watching. I mean, when somebody's going through that kind of trauma and you love them, it's equally as traumatic for you. And I saw that for you and Sumit. So what's it like for you now, seeing Ayush?
It's a very, very happy moment, I would say. And each day I'm seeing a new version of him. And as he said, he's trying all new things. It really makes me very joyful and happy to see him become a big man and a young man, mature man than what he was a few months back. So it's very nice. This journey has also taught us a lot, both Sumit and I. And we're very grateful to Sanjay and to all the doctors and to people who have come forward in terms of prayers, in terms of assistance from all parts of the world. And I think all that support has really helped us cross this bridge. So
Absolutely.
we've been very, very fortunate to have all of you together in our life,
Yeah.
and sharing our hard times.
And I think before we finish this conversation, what is coming out so clearly, obviously with Ayush, it was not a self-inflicted condition. He was born with it. But given how much of an global epidemic diabetes has become, and we know that diabetes is one of the leading causes of kidney failure, what message would you like to give people who may be taking their health for granted? And a lot of people, obviously, there's more awareness of diabetes, but perhaps not enough awareness of what the actual result of diabetes could be, which you've highlighted, dialysis and needing a kidney. What would you like to say, Smriti? I want to start with you. What message would you like?
I would say that we should go for health checkups very, very frequently. I would say once a year at least. And if there is a red flag raised by your physician in terms of even having it potentially, and it's not just diabetes. Of course, diabetes is, as you said, the largest cause for kidney failure. It's also hypertension. So at least we in our homes, we always, four of us go through, Ayush of course more frequently, but the three of us go through health checkups very regularly. The other cause is hypertension, and that is equal, I mean, second largest cause for kidney failure. And a lot of us also don't realize that we have high BP till our kidneys fail, or we see our markers in the health checkup on the kidney function, and then it's discovered that we had hypertension for many years, which was not treated. Unfortunately, in India, there is no health insurance to the underprivileged. So the only way to do it is to create awareness and provide, funds for them to go through this frequently, either through, agencies which do it for free, or through their employers who do it voluntarily, because there is no way for the underprivileged to go through these tests, and therefore they don't do it, and it's expensive. Healthcare is expensive. It's unlike UK, where everyone is covered by public health system. Diabetes and high blood pressure to control them at the right time is the best advice I would give to anyone to avoid a potential renal failure.
I also think that, to take it one step further, and, obviously the tests will tell you if something's wrong, but actually the preventative side of it is so much more powerful. And, both Ayush and you and Sanjay have talked about healthy eating, healthy living. And what I've noticed is the increasing use of packaged foods, even in India, where in the old days everything was freshly cooked. And it dismays me really, because I think though, that's where you get these problems of diabetes. It's the change in lifestyle, the more, the fast food, the junk food, and of course it's tasty. So once you get used to eating it, it's very hard to go back to eating healthily. What's been your experience? I mean, have you had to change meaningfully your diet?
My general message would be very simple that, whatever your goal in life is, if you aren't feeling physically and mentally fit, and I mean, I'm not being specific to diabetes, but I mean, just as a individual, if you want to work at your 100%, whatever your goal is, if you aren't physically and mentally fit, then you aren't going to have the necessary energy to kind of, do whatever you like. So if you connect the dots backwards very simply, whatever your goal is, if you want to reach there, if your whole foundation, which I believe is your health, is not at its optimum, then you can't, solve whatever you want to solve, right? So my biggest suggestion is, and there's a book I recently read, which is a great read for anyone, which is called Life Force by Tony Robbins. And his message is, be a CEO of your own health. You have your own control about what you want from your body in terms of mentally and physically. Identify the problem and solve it. You can do it yourself. We all have the access of the internet, research, have online resources to educate ourselves about it. Now it's, it's your choice if you want to be healthy or not. I don't think it's, you can't just take it for granted.
My sort of take on that is that it begins with self-awareness.
Right.
Because if we don't actually ever pay attention to what our body's normal is, like, when you were saying, Ayush, when you felt unwell, you didn't realize that your body was shutting down, your organs were shutting down, right? And you thought, oh, it's the flu or whatever. And that awareness, we need to take time to get that awareness. You can't be a good CEO if you don't know what your business is really about and understand all the nooks and crannies of what goes on. So I think that's a really powerful message. And if we can do that, we can take self-corrective action, which then means we don't have to spend a lot of money on healthcare, because
and I also feel that, physical and mental health, and what I've noticed recently, work together. So I feel this has been a very recent discovery of mine, which I don't think many people discover till they do it. So, for example, I've realized both my physical and mental health, feel at ease when I exercise. Now, exercise doesn't mean, you have to go to the gym. I think people sometimes take it synonymously towards the gym. We have to pull weights. This is, not really fun. I think you find something that you find fun, and you don't have to be necessarily good at it. If you have friends, you do a team sport, right? If you are more of an individualistic person, you swim or you run out, and the dopamine release you get after you burn that sweat and have a nice shower afterwards is so good that if you have, let's say, anything on your mind mentally, that'll also go at ease, because once you tire your body, you tire your mind as well.
So Sanjay, any sort of final words from you in terms of what you consider to be a good healthy lifestyle and a preventative?
Yeah, three things. One is diet. What we eat is what we become. So one has to be mindful of it, and anytime one deviates, that has to be an exception, rather than. And once you make an exception, you treat it like an exception and try to make up for it for some days. But frequently, if something if you're deviating from a healthy diet every day, then that can lead to a problem. Then that is no longer an exception. Then that is the norm. So once you have your diet a good balanced diet in place, that should solve a lot of issues. The second thing is exercise, and very rightly put by you and Ayush. You have to keep moving. We are animals. We're designed to move, and we must keep moving. The more we move, the healthier we are. And the third thing is cultivate interest and de-stress. So not de-stress as in, okay, today I'm going to de-stress. In your day-to-day living, try to take out some time for yourself, where you be with yourself and de-stress. Maybe practice your hobbies, maybe meditate, whatever suits you. So these are the threefold things: diet, exercise, and de-stress.
I believe in sort of abundance. That everyone believe that, there's two parts to it. One is to, when you need help, to be actually feel okay to ask for it. Because a lot of people feel, oh, I don't know if I should ask for help because, what if they say no, or what if it makes me uncomfortable. I think asking, and you should talk about how people created a community even when they were getting dialysis. There's a beautiful way of, seeing that, like people are in it together. And, we are humans who are not meant to live in isolation. We are meant to work together as a family or as a community. And I think like you said, Sanjay, if we are blessed with good health, someday, maybe one member in our family might need something that we are not able to give. But my thinking is, if I'm willing to give it today to someone who needs it, that someday when my family needs it, I'm not around. I hope that's so. I think if more people went into it with their eyes open about the risks and everything, I think we will have a much more beautiful, giving world. And I'm particularly so happy to see Ayush looking so well, because I did see you when you were going through your really difficult time, and I can see the change in you, and long may that continue. So any final words from any of you, and then we can finish today's conversation.
Just one line, that you become richer by giving.
Yes, I agree.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Sanjay?
I completely agree with Smriti. Let's create a giving culture around us.
It's great. Thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for your time and effort. Thank you.